Okay, we're now going to move on to something that is, I think, at the heart of how most organisations need to think about disrupting themselves and how having a better engagement with their customers. We're going to be joined in a moment by Katja Forbes, who's an Australian expert in experience design. She founded SIFE, a specialist business in research and experience design, in 2014, and has a range of clients where she's helping them innovate around their customer experience. Clients such as Qantas, Commonwealth Bank, IAG and Roche. She's passionate about telling a story, which is going to come out in her presentation. And her story about also encouraging other women to tell their stories about success in business. She's given presentations at Women in Design, Leaders in Heels, Women in Commerce, Code Like a Girl, and at a range of organisations, including Telstra and Macquarie Bank. She's also a mentor for Remarkable, an innovation incubator for people who have ideas for products that deliver to the disability community. And she's an educator. She's an educator at Sydney University, where she regularly lectures in the design faculty. To talk to us about the customer journey and design, please welcome Katja Forbes. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, I sound really rad, don't I? Thank you so much for having me here today. It's really exciting to be in this beautiful room with all of you in the spirit of learning and connecting. I'd like to personally acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Gadigal people, and extend that acknowledgement to all members of the Eora Nation, as well as Aboriginal leaders, past, present, and future. So I'm here today to talk to you about customer journeys and goal-directed design. As Tim said, I am an experienced designer. The definition of my job is pretty woolly, so I'm hoping that by the end of this you will at least have a vague understanding of what I do, or at least more than my mum, who wrote it on a post-it note and stuck it next to the phone, just in case anybody asked her, what does Katja do? So I'm going to do 3 things in my 30 minutes here, and I am going to take my full 30 minutes. The first thing I want to do is I want to explain to you what a customer journey is and clarify a little bit of language, because we in the experience design community create a lot of words that are confusing to ourselves and definitely to others. So I'm going to clarify some language for you. Second thing I'm going to do is talk about goal-directed design and explain how that can actually be something that you use in your business to solve customer problems. And the third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through some examples and hopefully give you stuff that you can take away into your own businesses and try this out and see whether or not it works for you. I'd say there's probably people in this room who have worked with customer journeys before, but there's also people in this room who haven't, which is why I'm just going to take a little bit of time talking about what a customer journey is. So it's not just a whatever that is, it's an experience. So you can insert anything into that blank space and it becomes the catch cry of the 21st century, a car, a restaurant, a concert. People are looking for experiences. They're looking for brands to provide them with something more than just, here's the product that you bought. And customer experience, which is where I'm going to be talking about a lot today, is about what is that person's experience with your product or your service from their point of view. So it has nothing to do with what your business objectives are or how you do your finances or what happens in your departmental silos. It is the experience that this human being has when they interact with whatever your product or service is. And it can also be digital, it can be physical, it can be anything. And it's that whole journey end to end. So a customer journey, the thing that's interesting about it is it explores people's thoughts, their processes they go through, the emotions that they have while they're doing it. What sorts of paths do they take? All of those things form part of the customer journey, and it's something that starts with a primary need that a customer needs to solve or a human needs to solve when they're interacting with your product or service. And it's broken down then into a bunch of micro needs as they go along. You know, I solve this bit, then I solve this bit, then I solve this bit. And it ends when that primary need is satisfied by your product or your service. And that person walks away going, okay, I have completed the thing that I need to do. Or things that I need to do. Customer journeys go across multiple locations and time. But it ends when that need is met. And journeys are really holistic. People are always coming from somewhere and going to somewhere else. They are bringing all of the experiences that they have had in other places to whatever it is you've put in front of them, and they will take that away to the next place. People don't just come from the moon and land on your website or start using your app. They bring all of the experiences they had with, say, using Airbnb or Uber or anything else and go, well, why isn't this thing that I'm using from your company as easy as that? And so this is the network effect. Whatever it is that they have experienced before, they bring it with them to the experience that they're having with your product or service. User journeys are not flowcharts, decision trees, use cases where human does this, system responds with this. They're really much more of a role-playing and scenario and context of people actually doing real things in the real world. And only one thing can happen at a time. The user journeys or customer journeys don't have, if then else in them. They're very much the story of the customer interacting with your product, service, and company. So customer needs really come first here, and journeys validate if something's going to work in reality. Now, you find out about your customer needs, surprisingly, by talking to your customers. This sounds very obvious, but I would like you to throw up the horns or put up your hand if you're less metal. If you have done what Carl talked about this morning and actually sat down personally and talked to your customers about the experience they have with your product or service, you have the foundations of making a great customer journey. And I saw a few horns, but not everybody's metal here. So what you have is you have data. You have information about your customers. You have the things that they have told you, the experiences that they've had, because you can't make a customer journey out of thin air. Customer journeys cannot be missing. For example, we use personas a lot in design. So the persona is a fictional representation of an actual customer, an actual person who uses your product or service. The customer journey, it has to have a person to go on the journey, and that person is the persona who can be represented. And it's really important that you have data that sits underneath those personas. So you actually have something that you can stand on cement and say, I know this to be true because I heard it from 20 customers, 30 customers, 100 customers, however many you did in your research. It is so critical for you to have this kind of data. So let me clarify some language here. Who's worked with user experience people, UX people? Few of you, okay. CX people, service designers. Oh, it's getting even less and less. There's like one at the back who's worked with service designers. Okay, so we've created quite a lot of sub-disciplines within our discipline, which becomes very confusing. So what I wanted to do is just clarify for you, what is UX? What is CX? What is service design? And how do these hang together in the context of customer journeys? So user experience is deliberately and cohesively designing for an individual touch point. A touch point is not a channel. So it's not like I'm designing for the mobile, I'm designing for a screen, I'm designing for in-branch experience. A touch point is a moment in time where a person needs something from your product or your service. And it's answering that need with whatever interface or whether it be a human conversation even. User experience is designing very deliberately for that interaction. A great example of this is Apple. Apple are the master of touch points. Everything about Apple is a touch point, is a very deliberately designed touch point. Their packaging is a touch point. There's something magical about opening up an Apple product. Their stores are a touch point. Their software development kits are a touch point. Even that experience that they give to people who are developing software for their operating system is part of the overall customer experience that people are having with their brand. And each one of those is very deliberately designed, and that's user experience, where you're designing that interaction. Customer experience is not customer service. So it often has a lot of relevance to your frontline staff because they're the people who are talking to customers, but it is not actually customer service. It's more than that person-to-person interaction. Here's a really, really basic customer journey going across a bunch of channels. This is a hotel example. So we have the channels of hotel reception, website, and mobile app. First touch point is that exploring on the website. Second touch point, booking a room on the mobile app. Third, checking in. Fourth, going back to the mobile app to use a mobile key to get into your room. And fifth, to come to the checking out back to the hotel reception. Now, that customer experience, it's the end-to-end experience that that person has had through the whole lifetime of interaction of that journey. So they've actually traversed about 3 or 4 different departments within a company. They've gone through the digital channels, they've gone through the physical channels, but ultimately, customers do not care. They don't care that they went from one department to another department. In that particular instance, Hilton is Hilton is Hilton is Hilton is Hilton to them. If it was a plane example, they would have gone and booked online, and then they would have checked in online, and then gone to the airport, bag dropped, and then they would have gotten on the plane, and then had been on the plane, gotten off the plane. That's so many different departments within an airline. But for them, Qantas is Qantas is Qantas, is Virgin is Virgin is Virgin is Virgin. They're having that one interaction with the brand, and it doesn't matter to them that they have traversed the entire silo set of your company. So when you actually understand a customer journey, you can start passing them more seamlessly between the areas of your company that they need to interact with. And who's actually doing this well? Well, nobody, really. So there's an actual rating system that's called the Temkin Ratings, and it's 3 things. So customer experience is made up of ease. Could I do the thing that I wanted to do? Satisfaction. Was I satisfied with what I wanted to do? And it's really important to make sure that you understand that what is easy is really the crux of the customer experience. Do we make it easy for people? And also the net result. Did I do the thing that I wanted to do? So ease, satisfaction, and could I complete my task? Those 3 things come together to make up overall customer experience, and the Temkin Ratings have got people's expectations of companies is so much higher now than it has been in previous years. And pretty much, I think there's only about 15% of companies that are getting rated as good or even very good in terms of customer experience against those 3 metrics. So if we remember the customer experience journey, so these are all of the customer actions that are going across the channels. Service design is where it gets even more tricky. So service design, we have our customer actions at the top there. So booking a room, checking in, entering the room, having a movie on demand, checking out. Service design is where we actually start looking at people, processes, and ecosystems within the company. So we have on the front stage the employee actions or things that a customer might possibly interact with, which could be a website, could be anything that they're actually seeing. That's the front stage of service design. And then you've got this line of visibility underneath that, and then there's everything in the backstage that sits behind it that supports the customer actions, but that the customer never sees. Things like the transport, things like the on-demand movie system. Customers are never going to see the guts and the processes of that. But service design very deliberately and cohesively designs all 3 of those layers, understanding the customer layer, designing that layer that they interact with, the front stage, and then designing the backstage that sits behind it to support it. There are not many companies that are doing this particularly well because it is really hard stuff. But it is critical, because if you have something that does not support a customer action in either your front stage or backstage, that person will fall into what is called a service crevasse, and you will never see them again as they depart from ever coming to your company to get anything from you. This is where you need to have something which is called a customer-obsessed operating model. This is from a Forrester article of about a year or so ago, and this says that the people who are customer-obsessed from not just their frontline support, but throughout the entirety of their organisation are the ones that will succeed. And the ones that do not take a customer-obsessed operating model will just end up chasing broken customer journeys and misguided digital priorities, I think. There's an organisation that keeps telling me that they're going to be the digital this of the future, and I'm like, if you're saying that now, you're too late. So it's very important to really look at your entire company as being customer-obsessed. Amazon is a great example of customer-obsessed operating model. They back the customer at every point in time. They back the customer even if they buy something off the Amazon marketplace from somebody else and want a refund. They ensure that every single interaction that people have with them is focused on the customer achieving whatever outcome it is that they're trying to get from interacting or buying things from Amazon. And Jeff Bezos has talked about him having a customer-obsessed operating model, and it is something that works for them hugely well. And you can see that I think their next play is actually getting into shipping logistics and things like that. So they're a company, the shipping logistics, no customer's ever going to see that, but it forms part of that backstage of their service design, which ensures that customers get what they want when they want it in a timely fashion. Your culture is actually your company's operating system. So if you don't have a culture in your company that will embrace innovation, that will embrace customer obsession, you're going to end up with the Kodak moment. So Kodak, actually in 1975, they invented digital photography, but they did not have a company culture that was able to innovate and work nimbly enough to take advantage of it and then ride that wave of innovation to a better future. And they're still trying to catch up. I think they've just released an app a couple of years ago called Kodak Moment, which is basically a form of Instagram. But they're not really succeeding in trying to catch up. And the reason why they missed the boat was because they were a staid company culture that was unable to embrace the innovation that they themselves created. And you get what you reward in your organizations. So you reward the status quo, you'll get the status quo. You need to reward innovation for innovation to be something that people will feel is of value. So to get onto the second thing, I wanted to have a chat quickly about goal-directed design. This is from Alan Cooper, who ran Cooper Design, recently sold to Wipro, actually. And what he talks about is making sure, he was a software engineer, he's the guy who came up with Visual Basic. And he, in his career, figured out that, do you know what, if you don't put the human being at the center of the design decisions that you make, software, technical, visual, whatever, you're actually going to end up with something that does not work for them. And so he came up with goal-directed design, and goals come in, say, 3 flavors. We have end goals. So end goals is where somebody wants to achieve something, where they have something to accomplish. It's fairly tactical. The other type of goal is an experience goal. So it's about how people want to feel when they're experiencing your product or service. What do they want to get out of that experience? And the third one is life goals. So this is where we're talking about very much more long-term things. So what are the things that people want to achieve during their lifetime, and what makes them feel good about being themselves? And your life goal may be a big fat gypsy wedding, but if that is your business, you need to be able to ensure that you can deliver to that goal. So for example, for a car. So an end goal for a car, I want to buy a car. That is your end goal. An experience goal for a car, I want to feel safe when I'm sitting in my car and driving around in my car. And your life goal for buying a car, I want to buy a car that really reflects the human being that I am and says the right things about my personality and looks after me, my family, whoever it is that I want to put into it. So think about it. What goals are you trying to solve for your customers? Are you trying to solve end goals? Are they very tactical? Are you trying to solve experience goals for them? Are you trying to solve life goals for them? When you're in financial services, often you are sort of really trying to solve life goals, and maybe you haven't thought about it in that context. If you're selling a product, perhaps you're really trying to more solve an end goal. I can buy this thing. So think about the types of customers that you have talked to, that you've interacted with, and which goals are you trying to solve for them? Or if you're trying to solve all 3, how are you doing that? And it's also, goals are very much tied to motivation. So motivations come in 3 flavors as well. They come in behavioral, what is it that a person wants to do? A behavioral motivation is very much tied to an end goal. Visceral motivations. Visceral motivations is about how you want to feel. So visceral is often very much tied to that experience goal. So if you look, what is the motivation? What is the goal? And then there's the reflective goal, which is always very much a reflective motivation, which is very much tied to your life goals, reflecting on yourself, who you are, what it is that you are trying to achieve in your long-term life. So think about, what are your customers' motivations and what are their goals, and how are you solving them with your business? Are you solving them with your business? Can you, if you're just solving end goals for them, solve something more, solve something, some experience goal, a life goal, something that is bigger than that tactical interaction? Right, third thing, Customer journey. So I'm going to show you how to construct a journey and give you some examples. Constructing a journey, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is time and location sensitive. Two things cannot happen at one time. If you think about this as it's a scenario that a person, your persona, is your customer, is going through. You have to actually, they can't be in two places at once. They can't be thinking two different things at once. So it is that very much time-sensitive, time-focused way of going through a set of actions, a set of interactions with your product and your service. You can have there's some nice-to-haves into your journey. You can have moments of truth, which are points in time where something really incredible happens, where you solve something really amazingly, or they can be a moment of truth where something is so deeply painful for them to undertake and do that you have no choice but to solve it in whatever solutions you come up with for the future state of your product or your service. The other thing that is nice to have in there, and I've got it in one of my examples, are these supporting characters, because in a customer journey, and this is what I mean, it's not a flowchart. They're actually interacting with other humans. They're interacting with people who give them advice. There are people within their important circles that will guide them one way or another and influence their decisions. So there's two basic journey layouts. There's the one that's a little bit easier, the one at the top that's Starbucks experience map. That's your classic timeline. Can be either left to right, top to bottom, but it just goes along a classic set of steps. Or if stages are more important to you, there's the wheel layout. So, and you can do it in either way, but you have to decide what's more important. Is the steps of the journey and those interactions and touch points more important, in which case you go for the classic timeline, or are the stages of the journey more important? And then a wheel can be more applicable. I've only really ever seen Lego use the wheel successfully. Starbucks has used the timeline there, and they actually use that experience map to reorientate their business away from being a coffee shop and towards being a place where people come to work. Because they realised in all of the customer research that they did, do you know what, people aren't coming here just to have a coffee and then go. People are coming here and staying for like 6 hours, 7 hours, and actually drinking coffee just because that's what they have to do to keep their seat and use the Wi-Fi. So let me give you an example. Meet Shane. So this is an example from a fictitious superannuation product. So Shane is 19, he has just got his first proper hospitality job. He's been in and out of hospitality jobs being a surfer for years and years and years, since he'd left school. But he's now sort of embarrassed to be living at his parents' place. He wants to get a job. So he went to TAFE, got his certificate, and then got a proper job. His employer handed him some forms. He said, here's your superannuation choice form. And Shane went, oh, don't really know I think I've already got like 4 superannuation funds from all my other hospo jobs. I don't really know what to do with this one. What do I do? So this is the trigger for Shane in undertaking this journey with this superannuation product. He needs to figure out what to do with his super. He doesn't know anything about super really, and to be honest, he doesn't really care. He feels like super is for old people, which is true, but you have to do it as a young person for it to matter when you're an old person. So I'm told. Okay, so this is Shane. This is your journey flow. So if you want to do a journey, so you start with your trigger. So trigger, got a proper hospo job. Primary need, figure out what to do about his superannuation. And there's a bunch of micro needs that go on in this journey. One being, I need to get trusted advice. Next micro need, I've got to apply for an account. Next micro need, I want to limit the data input because I hate filling in forms. And then micro need, I'd like a solution suggested to me because I don't know what I'm doing. The next one, understanding the next steps. And then his goal is attained. He opens his superannuation account and he's got instructions to do the next thing. So this is the journey flow. This is a very simple example, but this is completely doable if you have the data to back it for what your customers are trying to do with your product and service. So let me show you how this played out in this particular project. So it looked like this. We've got Shane, we've got his key persona information, we've got his trigger, we've got his opening scenario, and then across the channels there, everything happens at 7 o'clock in Shane's home, and across those channels we have what he is doing, what he is thinking, how he is feeling, and what is the touch point. So those are the 4 most simple ways of doing a journey. So for example here, he starts out, he's looking at his form, he's very unsure, he thinks, what do I need to do? Maybe my dad will help. Here we have supporting character dad. So Shane's dad gives him some advice. Shane then goes through each of those journey points that I showed you. He doesn't have to put in too much data because he's already a customer of this organisation, so it knows stuff about him. So that automatically fills some stuff in, which is fabulous for him. And he goes through all of those steps and then finally applies and then gets some information about what he has to do as his next step. So the customer journey allows for us to see what interactions he's going to have, what are his pain points and points at which we can create something that is desirable for him, and what do we have to design as a touch point in order for him to be able to achieve that end goal of I'll get my superannuation sorted. So that's an example. This is real-life project examples of where we've used customer journeys to articulate what happens. And for those of you who work in Agile, you can actually elicit your user stories from customer journeys and give you the functionality that you need. But that's a whole nother talk, and I definitely don't have time. So there's many styles of customer journey. You just need to go to Google and Google customer journey, go to images, and it'll pull up this one. This one usually sits at the top. This is one done by Adaptive Path, who are a really great agency. But what I don't like about this one is it's completely missing a persona. There is no human in this customer journey. I don't know who's going on this journey. I don't know anything about them. I don't know anything about their behaviours or their motivations. This is simply it's kind of a complex process map. But it has some interesting aspects to it. It talks about time. It talks about things going linearly or things going around in circles. But ultimately, because it is missing that persona, I feel like that is the biggest failing of this. So in the customer journeys you create, make sure there's a human. Make sure somebody's going on the journey. Otherwise, it's just an empty train carriage. This is another nice one. This is a broadband provider journey. I like this one better because it actually has a human in it that is involved. And they show the emotional experience sort of as a bunch of confusing graphs. I've used the Lego heads or smiley faces, or emoticons are really useful for this, especially I think emoticons and emojis are very much more in use today with people with their smartphones. So when I've done this work with customers and got them to build out their own customer journeys, I just give them a set of emojis and go put those against where they belong in your customer journey. So there's lots and lots of different styles that you can create in them. The one that I showed you from the original project, that's a very simple style. These ones are more complicated. But you can build it in Lego. Like, this is legit. I do this with customers. I've just done this with a bunch of airline customers, getting them to build their desired future state for their experience with the airline out of Lego. You can actually get certified as a Lego Serious Play Facilitator in case any of you are looking for a change of career. So this is one way of doing it. You can actually build out customer journeys using Lego and have people explain it. It's not about what they build, it's about the story that allows you to tell. And when you're thinking about the journey, there's a couple of hats that you can put on to go, okay, well, how should this journey resolve itself? You can actually think about the journey and pretend that the solution, the product or service, is magic. What would happen if this was magic? I always let people put magic into journeys, so long as they can explain to me a little bit about how the magic works. Because if you put something in there that is like completely fantastical and magical and crazy, if you ratchet that back just one step, maybe you've got an incredible innovative idea. But you won't ever get to that incredible innovative idea unless you go for the outrageous first that can't possibly be done. So pretending it's magic is a really great way of getting to innovation in your customer journeys. And the second thing is thinking, what if it was human? If this was a human, how would it respond? If my product was human, how would it respond to this customer need? If it was human, how would it respond to being pushed or pulled in this way? Or how would it respond if something broke? So that's another great lens to put on across your customer journeys. Key takeaways. Customer experience is made of success, effort, and emotion. Nail those three, you nail your customer experience. To deliver a really great customer experience, you need a supporting culture. You can't do it in an organisation that is not going to embrace customer obsession from the absolute ground up. From people who don't ever talk to or see customers, they must be as customer obsessed as the person who is on the phone. Customer journeys, they address all three types of goals: the end goal, the experience goal, and the life goal. And they help us to consciously design for all levels of the human cognition and emotion, because we're interested in what people are thinking and how they're feeling when they're interacting with our products and services. How are we servicing their needs? You've got to make sure that you keep them data-driven. If you don't have research data and a deep understanding of your customers, you are making things up, and it is very expensive mistakes to make when you build something based on something you made up. Because I can't tell you how many clients that I've been in, and they've said, oh, well, I've got a bank account with this bank, I'm a customer, I can represent. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're the general manager of the online banking, so you can't possibly represent for your customer base. You're way too biased and way too close. But people often think that because they use a product, they're good enough representation of the customers. No, talk to your actual customers. And in your industry, make sure that this process is really transparent to all of your stakeholders, everyone who's involved. They understand how you got from where you went in the customer data through to solution design. Take them through the whole process with you. Make sure that they see how it works. Experience design, sometimes it's treated like a little bit of a black box, and I think that it's important to remember that we are, well, me as an experience designer, I am sharing with all of my clients how I do what I do, so that when I walk out the door, the knowledge stays within the business and people can advocate for the really great work that we've done. Because otherwise I just take my box of tricks and wait for you to ring me up again and go, ha-ha, this will be twice as much. So that's transparency is a very important way of working with people. And finally, the last thought, when you're doing a customer journey, I think if you have a crack at it and it doesn't work out as well, that's okay. Perfectionism is just a form of procrastination. I would encourage all of you to attempt this, see how you go, see if it works for you as a tool and how you can make it work for you as a tool, and then iterate on it. A customer journey shouldn't be, and a persona even, shouldn't be something that just stops and stays and dies in a drawer. It should be something that's constantly iterated on, constantly changed and updated as things change, technology changes, and people change. That's all I've got to share today. There's a few resources because there's a lot of stuff available for free on the internet. And I wanted to leave you with some resources where you can go to find out more about design thinking tools, which you can use to create customer journeys. There's courses that you can do. They're all fairly either inexpensive or free. So really make use of the terrific resources. IBM, for example, puts all of their design thinking practice online for free for you to pick up and use. So I encourage you to very much go and have a look at this and see what you can utilize from the online world. Thanks so much. It's been great to talk to you about this today, and I'm really happy to take any questions if we've got time.
We will indeed. Katja, we're going to get a microphone together, but I think what you just told us was that if you're not thinking about your customer experience, then your competitors and future competitors you don't even know about yet certainly are.
Absolutely, yes. Do not be complacent. I work with a lot of different organisations, and some of them are more mature than others. As I said, I've worked with Commonwealth Bank for a very long time. They are very mature in their customer experience and their experience design practice. I worked with some of their competitors as well, and I've seen less maturity, but given that people sort of transition between the banks, I feel like those people will hopefully catch up.
Eventually.
Yep.
So what you're saying, it's a very shallow DNA pool. Now, first question over here, please.
Yes, Katja, thank you very much. It was really interesting. I've got a question. How does this process adjust and adapt to a company that target businesses rather than
How does the process adjust and adapt to what, sorry?
To B2B rather than B2C.
B2B?
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
So how do you work with personae in a B2B environment?
Yeah, so the way that I think service design is more appropriate to the B2B environment, but instead of having something that you would articulate as a customer action, it could be an employee action, or it could be a organisation. So if you treat the organisation as your user, almost treating them as human, the organisation action is something that goes across that top layer there. So it's less about that. It's less about the sort of general public customer lens, but it's applying the same sort of principles, but just having that different user or business in that customer space. But the principles and the technique absolutely apply. It's a bit harder though. It's more complicated.
Great question. We've got a question over here.
Hi, thank you for your session. It was very good. So where you gave the example of a car, could you possibly give a service example?
A what, sorry?
A service example?
Yeah.
Instead of a product?
Yep. maybe let's go government, because government is all a service. So an end goal with government would be, all right, let's go Centrelink even. So end goal with Centrelink, something's changed in your particular assets or something. I need to tell the government that I have less money coming into me now than I did before. So that is an end goal. It's a task that you want to achieve. An experience goal, when I interact with Centrelink, and I don't know if anybody has interacted with Centrelink, when I interact with Centrelink, I want them to feel like they see me as a human being, not as a number or a problem or something that makes me feel less of a human than I am, because I know a lot of people who interact with Centrelink end up coming away from that interaction not particularly well. So the experience that you're looking for when you have that interaction through whatever channels, conversations, interactions with digital, I want to feel like I'm a human. I want to feel like they care about me because I'm in a difficult spot. And say a life goal of that interaction with that service is I want them to see me for who I am over time and ensure that the benefits I'm entitled to over time are the benefits that come to me. And that I don't have to go and hunt them down constantly to get what I need. So that would be more of that long-term life goal. So that would be a service example of that.
Yeah. Even anyone who's got the Service New South Wales app, which is not it's not a particularly expansive piece of technology, but they have actually put the individual at the centre of what they do, so you can get your licence, your regos, your boat regos, your demerit points, reminders and all those sort of things on there at CTPs. All on there.
Service New South Wales is an excellent example, and if you think about their physical space as well, because I think they pilfered it from Canada, but the way that they've recreated their physical space as well when you go into Service New South Wales, plus their digital channel, has ensured a much, much better customer experience of their service.
So what you're actually saying is you don't have to come up with this yourself. You can actually legally steal it from other people.
Genius steals.
Absolutely. Apple did not invent the music player, did they? Okay, have we got any other final questions here?
So, Katja, for me, I was going to bring it across.
You can have a go in a minute, Anne.
I'm allowed. I'm lucky enough to have Katja on my syndicate.
Actually, as a chairman, just while we're getting the microphone to her, out of 10, how would you rate Anne?
Don't answer that. I haven't paid you enough today. Can I just ask one thing? Katja, in sharing all of this, I think one of the most important things is to be able to define who the customer is.
Oh, yeah.
In every step of the journey. So you've got multiple audiences and different customers. So define each of those customers before you take them on the journey, because what's important to them is not important to another customer and definitely not as important to you.
And for whatever it is that you're solving, you can decide out of your, say, 5 personas, who is the primary persona for this thing? Just this thing. It's not those 4, it's this primary person. So I'm going to make decisions in favour of how they behave and what they need in order to solve for them. So it's okay to not solve for every single customer. You can go in this, say in this business context, this particular customer type or customer persona is going to deliver us the most revenue. So we're going to try and solve for them for this product and this interaction. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, Giselle Howard from Syndicate 77. It's along the same lines, I think, of the service example that was being asked about. I'm in the public sector and also a regulator. So in terms of the customer journey, we have a lot of a push now, even from state-owned corporations, to be mapping their customer journeys. But the challenge is that within the things that we have to be a champion for, like mine's environment, it's a silent voice, so there might be parts of the city for socio-economic or what other reasons that don't raise the things. And when you ask the question, like we had in other talks today, is it okay? No, it's not okay. So just customer-driven doesn't get you there. Is it just a more complex mapping of a customer or stakeholder journey then for what we might need to look at for our business, where it's not just the customer that drives it?
Yeah, I think that the onus is on you as organisations to get out there to the people whose voices are either silent or need amplification. And this is true because I've done a lot of work within the disability sectors. And people with a disability, it's nice to have advocates, but they don't really need advocates. They need people who amplify their own voice to ensure that, I don't want to speak for somebody who has a disability. I want to amplify what they have to say. And it's about really making sure, if you know that there are silent voices, or voices that are not coming through, then the onus is on you as organisations to dig for it, really dig hard for it, and make sure that you do seek out all of those voices that are going to be customers or have an impact on customers or require something from you as a business or a service to make their lives better. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Great answer. Can you leave us with one thought?
Sure.
If you're going to start on this journey and you haven't yet started, what's the first step?
Know your customer. Get out there and talk to your customer, do your research, understand them in as thorough a fashion as you can, do qualitative research with them, observe what they do, then back it up with some quantitative research to make sure what you've seen in your qualitative setting comes through with a larger group of people. But it is, if you do not have data on your customers, who they are, what they need, how they behave, then you're operating in the dark and you're just going, oh, I'm going to spend $1 million designing that on something that I think might be true. So do your research.
Unbelievable. Very simple message. There is no question that every single organisation, doesn't matter whether it's a regulator, a consumer-driven organisation or a business organisation, is confronted by disruptors and alternatives. And the more alternatives there are, the better you better understand your customer. And you just held the mirror up very, very firmly to us to say, get on top of it. So, Katja, thank you. Could you please join me in thanking Katja?
Thank you.
Was that a curtsy?
Thanks. Yeah, a little one.
A little one.